Who's going to win tonight?
Alex Pereira.
Sounds like you know some.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on the Ground and Pound cast. It is me, one of your hosts, Vince, the world's okayest jiu-jitsu blue belt, and I am joined with a man who can tell the future in the world of MMA, and that is my co-host, Nostradamus, but we're just going to call him Roy for short because Nostradamus is a mouthful, and I don't feel like trying to, butcher that name every time I hand it over to my co-host. And, of course, we also have the other co-host of the show, the man, the myth, the legend, the man who doesn't need any introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway, the man whose idea it was to make this podcast in the first place, the one, the only, Rick. Say hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
What's going on, fellas?
This is a first for the Ground and Pound cast. We have all three hosts on at the same exact time. We got Roy and Rick together for the first time. This is a first. We are breaking new ground on the podcast. We're just going to continue growing, continue bringing all of you new content. So let's talk about the fights last night, fellas.
Oh, wow. What a night.
So
yeah, let's get into it.
So we had UFC 320, the rematch between Magomed Ankalaev and Alex Pereira, or as they say in Brazil, Alex Pereira, part 2, the rematch. And wow, I'm just completely blown away at how Alex Pereira just continues to prove me wrong time and time again. So for those of you that don't know, I've been doing predictions for many, many years, and I get Pereira wrong a lot. I've always thought he was really good, but there's times where I'm like, you know what? I think this guy is just going to be a little bit better, and he is. How many times has he proved me wrong just between you and me, Rick?
At least 5 times or so. And he's proven me wrong plenty as well. So, man, what a performance.
He proved me wrong last night. It was the only prediction I didn't get.
Same. So Roy and I actually had the same exact predictions, top to bottom, or at least on the main card. We didn't bother with the prelims. And I don't know about you, Roy, but basically I was like thinking, I think Ankalaev kind of has a certain flow. He's kind of figured things out. It's probably not going to be exciting, but I think he's just going to put Alex on his back foot like he did last time and probably grind out a decision. I thought it would go that way, but Alex Pereira didn't have those plans. I think it played out more in the way that Rick thought it was going to go, which was, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, when you watch a Pereira fight, if he's going forward, he usually wins. And the whole thing for me was, I didn't know if you'd figure it out in the first minute or two, because you know how title fights go, especially they're long, they kind of feel each other out. But I thought by the end of the first round, we would know who was going to win the fight just because we'd know who was pushing the pace. Well, you see right from the opening bell, Pereira comes out, he's pushing the pace, he's walking him down. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, this is the aggressive Pereira that, we've come to know and love. And he put the gas down and just attacked. And of course, we know how it ended. But that to me was the whole deciding factor, was who is going to be able to assert dominance, who is going to get the center of that octagon. And it was Pereira from the jump.
And to clarify, it was all done within 1 minute and 20 seconds.
The crazy thing about this fight is what Pereira went through to get to it. I was so sure after him on the back foot against Strickland and then on the back foot against Ankalaev the first time, and 2 weeks ago when he came out, that he had to lose 28 pounds to make weight. And then after making weight, showing that he gained 28 pounds, I was like, this guy's gone. He's getting old. He's putting his body through untold amount of stress. I did not think there was any way he was going to go out there and perform like that. He blew my mind.
I think more than anything, he blew Ankalaev's mind. So, quick little replay of the fight, and this just really shows how much the mental game can actually change the fight. he physically broke Ankalaev, but he also mentally broke him. So we've seen plenty of times where a person who's not primarily a grappler is getting tagged on the feet, and all of a sudden, oh, you want to be a wrestler now. That's a phrase we've heard before from a few fighters, right? So Ankalaev is from Dagestan, and it's kind of a stereotype that people from Dagestan are all really good wrestlers. But if you look at his history, and we've talked about this before in previous episodes of this podcast, Ankalaev is not a wrestler first. He has some wrestling, but his takedown percentage accuracy is just over 30%. It's like maybe 31% or something like that. He primarily stands and strikes. And when Pereira just blitzed him from the opening bell and puts him against the cage and starts teeing off on him really, really bad, immediately he just shoots a nasty sloppy double leg, and you can see in his face he was getting hit. He goes, I don't like this. I need to change levels immediately to get out of this fire. And right there, that told me before the finishing sequence even happened, whenever he did that desperation shoot, I said the fight was over, because not only is he physically broke, but he's mentally broke as well. Pereira broke this guy in every single way you could.
Yeah, I was looking for Pereira leg kicks, and I thought leg kicks might be a differentiating factor. And we saw he threw 3 leg kicks right away, like right at his right leg. After that third one, we saw Ankalaev switch stance. And as soon as he switched the stance, Pereira hit him with that overhand right. And then it was like, oh, now I don't want to stand. To your point, now I want to go to the ground. And I mean, yeah, he just got crippled in every way. But I did think that leg kick was interesting. He threw that out there, boom, boom, boom. You could tell he didn't like it. As soon as he switched the stance, it's like Pereira, he had looked at tape. This is what's going to happen if he does this. And as soon as he switched the stance, the overhand right came. And we know Pereira for that left hook, but he's got power in both hands, and he got exposed a little bit. I thought that was really well done. You could tell that was something that was studied.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to say something a little controversial here.
Uh-oh.
I think that it was a bit of an early stoppage. Ankalaev, his guard, his defense was stopping the blows raining down from Pereira. He was still intelligently defending himself, even if it looked frantic, because he wasn't taking damage. I think another 5 seconds, Pereira probably would have actually earned the knockout. But there's always that chance that Ankalaev made a recovery, and he didn't get that opportunity this time.
I'm not really sure. I rewatched it this morning, and he wasn't taking a ton of damage, to clarify. Like, whenever it was called off, you can see Ankalaev was able to get up of his own accord, and he didn't seem to be hurt or bloodied or anything. But I think he was just in such a bad position. He was more or less just turtled up. And we've seen a lot of finishes where if you're just kind of turtled up and just kind of, you have your arms up in a blocking position, but you just lay there and just keep on taking shots, the ref's going to call it. So I think that's really what happened here. So
yeah, the ref was definitely being cautious and erring on the side of not letting the fighters get injured. But from my opinion, Ankalaev was still, protecting himself. If he wasn't taking damage, then he should have had the opportunity to recover.
I don't know what you think about that, Rick.
Well, my thoughts are the elbows that he was putting into his body, he wasn't really able to defend. He kind of crumpled up a little bit, but to your point, he was blocking the elbows that were coming down towards his head. He was, but that's still putting damage to him. But when those elbows started coming down on the body, it's like, okay, if I'm not going to hit you in the head, I'll hit you in the body. And then they called it. And to me, he was defending himself, but he wasn't putting him in a position to actually be able to get out of that. So,
Right.
Ultimately, I think the right call was made. But
yeah, there's kind of a lot of debate on what is intelligently defending yourself. And if they say intelligently defending yourself, because you could defend yourself unintelligently. And if you're just like kind of turtled up, like you just ball your arms up over your head and just pray that, you don't take any more hits, is that intelligently defending yourself? There's a lot of gray area there. And I think that maybe we were in this gray area on this stoppage. I'm not mad at it. I've definitely seen worse stoppages.
Oh, so, yeah.
I think it is what it is.
The right guy won.
The right guy won. That's really what it comes down to. This was one of 2 title fights we had on this night. We ready to talk about the next fight? Or do we have any more we want to talk about on this absolute decimation that was handed out by Alex Pereira?
I don't think there was much to talk about. Yeah, that was pretty quick.
We've already talked way longer on the fight than the fight actually happened.
Right.
Like, that's not going to happen on this next fight. This next fight, I don't know how it went for a full 25.
So before we really deep dive into this fight, I just want to say real quick, hats off to Corey Sandhagen for being an absolute warrior in this fight. For real.
Sandhagen was very, very impressive. Like I said on the last pod, and this I guess would be controversial for most, I think he's a top 10 caliber mixed martial artist. I just think he's that good. And I thought we saw his display of skills. You know, he wasn't afraid of the wrestling. He definitely could stand there. He put a lot of damage on Merab in the fourth round. It was very, very competitive. You know, we're used to seeing Merab kind of run through people, and he did get taken down, 21 times. So Merab still did his thing. By no means are we taking anything away from Merab, but for Corey to be standing there at the end of that fight, most people can't withstand, 25 minutes from Merab. It's just not a thing. They just melt. And Sandhagen's cardio was on display. Most people, they don't have that cardio, not that long. He was there. When that last bell went, he was standing right there. So big hats off to Corey Sandhagen. Again, proved his skill and his merit. And I think he'll still be around in the conversation for a title ultimately, but Merab did his thing as we expected.
Well, Sandhagen's only 33 years old. He's got a lot of career left to him, and with what he's accomplished, he'll get back to that title contention real fast, I think. Round one, he really surprised me, being able to stuff the takedown 4 times and stand there and trade with Merab. But you got to admit, Merab's boxing has come a long way.
Yeah,
it has.
That first round, actually, if I'm not mistaken, fellas, didn't all three of us agree that we gave Corey Sandhagen the first round?
Yeah,
absolutely.
So whenever I have the judges' scorecards in my hands right here, and actually 2 of the 3 judges also gave it to Corey Sandhagen. So that first round, I don't want to say I was nervous because it wasn't like I was really pulling from Merab. I didn't really care who won this one, but I was thinking to myself, man, are we about to finally see Merab lose? Because Corey looked really good in that first round. He was able to stop a lot of the takedown attempts in that first round, and he was able to implement his boxing. And that's actually what stood out to me the most. Corey Sandhagen is very well-rounded, but I think in this fight you got to see a lot of different angles of his game, and I think in particular his boxing might be his strongest suit. He was landing just a textbook 1-2 quite a bit. He has a lot more range than Merab. So whenever Merab would try to shoot or even just try to box with them, he would create the right angles. He would get in and out of the pocket. And he would pop a 1-2, 1-2. And then if Merab would try to shoot, he would, fight his leg out of it, back up to the cage so he can't get taken down and separate 1-2 again. He was doing that really well in that first round. And 2 judges and all 3 of us agreed that Corey took that first round. But then the second round happened.
And Merab remind us why he's champion.
Merab was dominant. 4 takedowns. That was a 10-8 round. We saw where the judges, 2 of the 3, said it was 10-8. Of course, the announcers were saying it. We were texting about it. Clear dominance. It almost looked like Chimaev DDP, like any of the first 4 rounds. He just picked him up, he took him down, he picked him up, he took him down. He controlled him in every aspect and was classic Merab.
He also stunned him a few times with strikes. He would, how Merab likes to mix in his grappling and his striking. So he'll pop at you a few times and then shoot a takedown, or he'll be trying to take you down. If you start to stuff it, then he'll pop up and punch you a few times. And he had Sandhagen stunned, rocked, hurt. I think maybe even a few submission attempts. I'd have to go rewatch that round. But I remember he had Sandhagen in bad shape in that second round. And Sandhagen found a way to survive.
And you got to give it to him for the durability.
Absolutely.
Now, he was saved by the bell, but who hasn't been at some point?
Right. So then the third round was very textbook Merab. It wasn't like the second round where he was close to finishing him, but he just put on a clinic of take you down, hit you, take you down, hit you. He had Corey up against the cage a whole lot. This was more of a 10-9 round. It wasn't absolute domination, but it was what we're so used to seeing from Merab. And another thing I want to point out in this fight is Merab did land a bunch of takedowns. I'd have to pull up the stats to see the exact number. But Corey Sandhagen, they say, actually stopped about roughly half of them. So he actually showed to have pretty good takedown defense, even though he got taken down a lot. But when it's someone like Merab and you could stuff roughly half of them, And I think that's another thing that contributed to Corey finding a lot of success in this fight is that he was able to stop some of the takedowns at certain points of the fight. So third round was a very typical Merab round. And then the fourth round happens, and this is one where a lot of fans were split because I saw people talking about it online. Fighters were split where they comment on Twitter and it pops up, and the judges were split on it. I actually had Corey win in the fourth round. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, I had it as a toss-up. I wrote it down here. Toss-up, more damage for Corey, more control time for Merab. So really it just depends on how you evaluate. Are you looking more for who had more damage? Are you looking for who dominated the round more? That's kind of the way I saw it. I don't think Merab had a lot of damage, or rather delivered a lot of damage. Corey had some excellent stand-up. He had an uppercut. He popped him with a couple real stiff jabs. Looked really good on the feet. Stunned him a couple times, I thought. But again, it's just kind of what's your flavor. What do you value more?
Yeah. And, this is really interesting because I have the scorecards up right here. And everybody's favorite judge, Mike Bell, he's the one who always gives like the most ridiculous scores here. He is the only judge of the three that agrees with us that Corey won round 4. But he's also the only judge who thought Merab won round 1.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't really understand these scores a little. I mean, the right person won at the end of the day, but it is a little interesting on how they scored this. So, and then we go into round 5, and it's very much like round 3. It was just Merab doing Merab stuff. He wasn't close to a finish, but he, established his dominance over Corey and just made it to the decision. And Merab, and still your bantamweight champion.
And looked fresh. I mean, we already know about Merab's gas tank, and he's called the machine, and we get it. We know why, but to look that fresh in the 5th round, and it's not like Corey wasn't given resistance. I mean, like we said, he won round 1 clearly. Round 4 was, he probably won that round. So it's like, but man, you look at Merab, and I do think that's the differentiator. Even though Corey didn't look super gassed, he looked more tired. Merab looked like he just got out the locker room.
Right.
It's like didn't even break a sweat, and it was just a classic Merab performance in many ways. Ultimately, attempting 40 plus takedowns and getting 20, 21, like I said, whatever it is, that's incredible. And for Corey to be able to withstand that just offensive onslaught at all. Again, props to him, but Merab's gas tank proves once again he's elite. I don't really know who we're going to put against him next, but man, what do you say? I mean, at some point, he's like I said, he's past John Jones, he's past Khabib, George St. Pierre, Max Holloway for consecutive wins now, 4th all time alone, and just got to give your flowers, just incredible.
So here's
I got to give Sandhagen a lot of credit for being mentally tough to come back from that tough enough to come back from that second round and fight on par and even win another round. That is some self-belief.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's actually going to lead me to my next question here. What's next for Corey Sandhagen?
Yeah. So Corey Sandhagen, again, he just had lost to the champion, so it's not like he should really fall too far in the rankings. I'd like to see him versus Sean O'Malley. They're trying to get somebody to fight Sean O'Malley. I feel like that's a good stylistic matchup. And depending on where Corey wants to take it, but I think they could stand. I think Corey could win. In fact, I would pick Corey to win. Again, I value him that much. I think he's just superb in all aspects. But that would be a fun one. That would get the fans excited. O'Malley might even dye the hair. Let's see something entertaining. So that would be my pick.
What do you think, Roy? What's next for Corey Sandhagen?
I'd like to see him fight Peter Yan.
You want to see that rematch to see if he could get that win back? He did recently also lose to Umar Nurmagomedov, but I don't know if we need to see that fight. I think we should probably wait to see. I
think Yan would be a much more interesting rematch.
Yeah, I think Umar is probably gonna get a rematch soon because I don't think anyone else could touch him. But I think Peter Yan and Corey Sandhagen, the rematch would be a good fight. If you don't want a rematch, I think Corey Sandhagen and Sean O'Malley. I think those two would be really good contenders. I think they would be very, very entertaining fights. And speaking of entertaining fights, did you know that Yuri Prochazka fought Khalil Roundtree last night?
That was a thing?
I know that Yuri Prochazka got his butt kicked for 2 rounds and managed to pull it out in the end.
It's almost like Khalil Roundtree is really, 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 really good for 2 rounds because he was up 2 rounds on Poatan,
Yeah.
and then Poatan turned around in the third. Yuri Prohaska is one of the most entertaining fighters on the entire UFC roster.
Well, Roundtree was obviously gassed at the end of the second and into the third. He put everything he had into those first, not 8-9 minutes, and then had nothing left to answer for Yuri at all.
And to be fair, Yuri was pretty gassed in third as well. He was still taking the fight to him, but you could see he was still a bit slower. The third round in particular was one of the most entertaining rounds I've seen in a very, very long time.
Yeah, that might be fight of the year as far as the round. We talked about that in the text, but as far as round 3 being, it goes right up there with any I've seen. Now, Khalil was gassed, but he was still able to put together, the random big throw here or there, and he connected a couple times. But Yuri, man, we talk about durable a lot on this podcast. You want to talk about durable? Yuri Prohaska. If he's not getting hit by Alex Pereira and those hammers, then he's going to be there. That guy walked through a storm of a flurry of different offensive tactics. Man, the Muay Thai, the kickboxing, everything we've come to know about Khalil Roundtree, it was all on full display for, like he was saying, first 8 or 9 minutes. I mean, Khalil looks about as good as anybody in mixed martial arts when he's got a full gas tank. But man, after he kind of ran out of steam, Yuri, like I said, he went through the storm, which was impressive as you could possibly imagine because he was getting hit with everything. But then, of course, he turns it on. And, he just started walking him down. He wasn't even worried about getting hit so much because he knew he couldn't get a lot behind those power punches that he normally throws, talking about Khalil. So Yuri just decided, I'm just going to come straight forward. He walks him down. That left hook, man, just wow. Wow, what a performance. What a fight.
It really was. Go ahead, Roy.
I saw an interesting tidbit about Yuri yesterday. It's been 10 years since he lost to anyone who not named Alex Pereira.
Wow.
Yeah, that is crazy. Yeah, that fight, the third round was the most exciting part of the fight, but the first 2 rounds were still pretty good. And in particular, that first round, I was really impressed with Khalil Roundtree's boxing combinations. Him being a Muay Thai guy, he likes to mix up and throw like a lot of low kicks, leg kicks. He could even clinch and throw some knees at you. But what I think was giving him the most success in that first round was his boxing, actually. Like he would slip a punch from Yuri, and then he would like hit him with like a 2 to 4, maybe in a 5, piece combo, just pop, 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 pop. And Yuri, you could see there's a few times where like he would get tagged and he would kind of separate and he would kind of wince his hands in his face, like he was kind of, gritting at it, like he couldn't seem to figure him out. Khalil's boxing, I think, was just really good in that first round. And the second round, it was a bit closer. It was maybe a toss-up round. I think most people had Khalil winning that round, but it was still pretty close. But Yuri in that third round just rallied.
Yep. That's the way I saw it as well. That second round was, to your point, pretty close. I think Roundtree, again, had more damage, and I think that's why he probably stole it on the cards. But yeah.
His boxing combinations were so clean in the first round, though. So clean.
Clean, and he's explosive. He can get in, get out. Again, Khalil's one of the best talents I think we have. It's just a matter of can he do it for 3 to 5 rounds, and I think that was the differentiator. Most people he runs through. Most people he gets a win last night because most people aren't standing there at the end of the second round with all the stuff he threw. But again, you get to this elite level here, and you start having people. Yuri, I mean, he's had one loss to a guy, in Alex Pereira, but aside from that, hadn't lost anybody in a decade. You're dealing with the elite of the elite. You have to be able to stand there. I think stamina is the most important thing you can have in all of mixed martial arts. If you don't have stamina, it doesn't really matter. If you gas out soon, people can wait it out. And I guess he's just got to work on that.
Yeah, the cardio was a big contributing factor because if you just skip the second round, watch highlights of the first round, then watch highlights of the third round. When Khalil was throwing his boxing strikes that I mentioned earlier, they were not only powerful, but they were so fast. They're like really, really, really fast. Then he goes to the third round and he was just like wobbly and it almost looked like he was throwing in slow motion. So
cardio looked like he could barely stand.
Yeah.
He looked like he went through an adrenaline dump after the second round and just couldn't recover.
Probably.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That happens. That happens even at the highest level.
Yep.
It's a pretty big deal on how you manage your emotions to keep everything in check so you can keep control of your body. I think anyone who's competed, period, has faced that at some point or another where you get an adrenaline dump. Not to make this podcast about me, but I remember the first time I competed in jiu-jitsu. As a white belt, I had 2 matches, and my first match was so sloppy, and I won barely. We were like just shoving each other around and not finding any kind of offense on each other. Then eventually he shoots like kind of a sloppy takedown. I was able to kind of turn him, make him fall to his back. I jumped on him, snatched an arm, and got a quick submission with just a few seconds remaining. Well, I'm just talking about like the adrenaline dump. It was not an impressive
win.
Just hear me out. It was not the most impressive wins, but I got a win, and my team started like cheering me, like they're really happy and really excited, and I got really excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I just competed for the first time ever, and I got a win. And then I had another match go out, and I was still thinking about the last match that I just had. And when I went out there, like my body started shaking from adrenaline. And then when I went out to the second round, I had basically no control over my body. Like my arms and legs were just kind of trembling a little bit. And when I clinched with the second guy, he just took me down at will and just dominated me to a decision. But that's an example of like what happens. Like if you can't keep control inside your head, inside of your emotions, like that kind of thing happens. So speaking of jiu-jitsu, some people that are way better than me at jiu-jitsu, we ready to talk about this next fight?
Let's do it.
So you got this Youssef Zalal going against Josh Emmett. Youssef Zalal.
I was so sure Zalal had this just over the top. You know he fought Tapura?
Yes. And actually had some success against him.
Won the 3rd round on all the judges' scorecards, brought it to a decision. Tapura couldn't finish him. This guy's special. He's coming up.
Josh Emmett also fought Ilia Topuria and had some success against him in some parts. But this Zalal, Youssef Zalal, is a black belt in jiu-jitsu with 10 submission wins. This dude's legitimate. And in this match against Josh Emmett, he ended up on his back and just snatched up an armbar and ended up being a verbal tap.
Yep. Don't see that very often.
No. Because whenever they separate him, like I didn't see him tap what was going on. We had a lot of people in the room talking, so I couldn't really hear. But when they did the replay, you hear Josh Emmett like yelling, tap, tap, tap. So he got locked in an arm bar. It was 1 minute, 38 seconds of the first round.
Yeah, Zalal looked excellent in that fight. The verbal tap, again, I was looking for it myself. I'm like, maybe I just missed it. Maybe the camera angle was weird. But it made me think, like, how many times have we really seen verbal taps? You know, I watch a pretty decent amount of MMA, and I've seen a couple, but it's certainly not a common thing. It's not something you see every weekend.
No,
I got to admit, if I was caught in a submission, I would do verbal and physical tap every time. 'Cause I ain't getting nothing broken. If it comes down to that moment, I'm going to be like, I'm out, you win.
Usually a verbal tap is reserved for if, like, both your hands are locked up where you can't tap, you know?
Right.
Or you're just at an angle where if you tap the mat, you think they might not hear it or something like that. So I couldn't tell by the angle if he had the other arm that he wasn't applying the arm lock to, if he had that one like secured in some type of way where Josh Emmett couldn't tap. I couldn't really make it out by the camera angle that they showed us, but still, it was a really clean arm bar, just a little over a minute and a half. This was really impressive by Zalal. I'm definitely gonna have to keep an eye on this guy and see what happens with him as he climbs up these ranks, because I love good submission artists. I think we need more of them.
And what happens with Josh Emmett? 40 years old, lost 4 of your last 5. I mean, what is his future looking like?
So Josh Emmett, like, he does have some losses, but look at the guys he's lost to. Yair Rodriguez, Ilia Topuria, Leroy Murphy, and now Youssef Zalal. These are all by no means low-tier competition. He fights really good people, and he gets a lot of good wins. I think he's just fighting some of the best, and he's come a little bit short. At the end of the day, he still puts on really entertaining fights. He's still very dangerous against anybody that they put him against. And for someone who's a lot smaller, he has some pretty good knockout power. I mean, let's remember when he sent Bryce Mitchell to the Flat Earth realm.
Exactly.
And we all have to be thankful for that. Bryce Mitchell just needs to be knocked out over and over and over again.
Maybe they could fix what's wrong in his head. Like he gets that perfect punch that throws a couple wires in different directions, and he comes out some better sense or something. I don't know.
He gets punched in the head in his post fight. They're like, "So do you stand by your previous comments?" Nah, Hitler was a D-bag.
All right, so moving down this card, continuing talking about submissions, though, this fight I actually really, really, really enjoyed. The first fight on the main card, Joe Pyfer versus Abusupian. These names, man.
Marsupian.
I've been waiting for
Magomedov.
you to try this one.
I think I had it right last week. I looked at it and studied it. I'm like, it looks like Abusupian. I think that's how it's pronounced. I didn't catch it on Bruce Buffer saying his name last night. We had a lot of people in the house and we were all talking really loud. But this fight was actually really, really good. I think I want to go and replay it maybe later today because there was actually a lot of back and forth grappling between these two. It actually made it to the second round, and there were times where Pyfer was on his back and Magomedov had him in some pretty bad positions. He was hunting for submissions. They went back and forth. It was a grappling match where they occasionally punched each other, and it was a really good grappling match. It isn't like some of these where we see like boring wrestlers that take you down, they grind you out for decision. Like they were actively hunting for submissions, and eventually in the second round, Pyfer was able to he was going for a choke and then turning more into a face crank, but it is what it is, and he ends up getting the submission. So this is a really fun one to watch. If you are into the jiu-jitsu side of things, if you're into seeing the submissions, this is a really good fight to watch because of so much back and forth and so much submission hunting between the both of them.
Yeah, I had this fight going into it with Pyfer winning, but I thought it was going to be a lot more one-sided. Abu Super Saiyan really surprised me.
I thought it was either going to be a decision or a knockout because Pyfer tends to do more of that. But sometimes I forget he actually does have, leading up to the fight, he had 3 submission wins. So now he has a total of 4. But in this fight, I was expecting more stand-up and maybe a knockout or maybe a decision. But they end up going to the ground and end up going back and forth with some submission grappling. And it was really fun to watch.
So, yeah, part of my bad bet, I always got to place a little bet there. I had Pyfer winning by knockout, and I have to admit, I didn't know he was black belt in jiu-jitsu. I really didn't. Every time I've watched him, I guess I just catch him when he's knocking somebody into orbit, and I just figured he was one of those guys, But we saw the Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It was on full display yesterday, You see the body triangle. Of course, he ends up securing the rear naked choke, but seeing him on the mat, and then I started thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, I know Pyfer's a name. We all know him, and he's not even ranked. The middleweight division is so incredibly stacked. Here's a guy who's won 8 of his last 9, 7 by finish, and he doesn't even have a number next to his name. So I'm curious to see where he goes. But the versatility was the thing that I take away from this whole matchup. A guy, now he did drop him with the overhand right, and then he got him on the mat and stuff. But yeah, I mean, the first round was nothing but grappling. And the second round, of course, ended with the grappling. But that's a guy who can do it from all angles. And again, I'm curious where he goes because how many fights away is he? When you've won 8 out of your last 9 and you're finishing everybody, that typically, you're already right there like a fight or 2 away. So
I'd give him Paulo Costa.
That would be awesome. That would be fun. Man, that would be a good one.
That would be an awesome matchup, and then let him climb the rankings from there.
I like it.
I have such a hard time rooting against Paulo Costa. He's just so entertaining. I like him so much. I think it's because of his Twitter. He's just so funny. I'm always rooting for him to win because of that. I was rooting for him to win against Sean Strickland, but I didn't think he would, and he didn't. But it is what it is.
Speaking of Sean Strickland, now that he's coaching women's MMA, his first protege made it into the fights last night.
Oh, let's talk about that fight.
Yeah, her name is Veronica Hardy, and she went out there and grinded to a decision against Brogan Walker.
30-27 on all judges' scorecards.
Yep. She definitely controlled the fight. What my criticism is that she's too passive. They only had 33 punches between the two of them all fight.
Wow.
So it was very active for a women's fight then.
Yes. But there wasn't much grappling. It was all trying to feel each other out and find range, and Hardy managed to find it a little better. She did 26 of the punches, but To move up in the women's flyweight ranking, she's going to have to get a lot more aggressive.
Right. And speaking of the undercard fights, I'm going to talk about another one here. Patchy Mix. This was a guy who was on a very long win streak in Bellator. He was champion 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fight win streak coming into the UFC. He fought last night, and he's fought twice in the UFC so far. There was a lot of hype behind this guy's name. He is a submission artist, 13 wins by submission. This is a dude you just do not want to let get his hands on you. He is going to come into the UFC, and he's just going to wreck house. He's going to be the threat to the title in his division, which he is a bantamweight. And he's 0-2 in the UFC. Is this one of the biggest flops we've seen from another division come in, or what?
It happens from time to time. I mean, Chandler was dominant when he was in Bellator. He got in the UFC, and he's lost, four of his last 5?
No, his overall UFC record is 2-5. He's 2 wins, 5 losses overall in the UFC entirely. So this guy's 0-2. His first match was against Mario Batista, who, to his credit, is a good fighter. But he gets dominated in that fight. In this fight, some people disagreed with the judges. It was a split decision loss. But whether it's a split decision loss or not, the guy he was facing was actually a guy who's making his UFC debut. So he's not a very experienced guy. And Patchy Mix, this guy who's a champion of Bellator, who had all this momentum behind him, can't beat a guy making his UFC debut. So, is this the biggest hype train derailment we've seen in quite a while?
Well, don't underestimate Jacob. Even though it was his debut, he could be the next John Jones.
You never know. You never know. Now, Mario Batista, he's one fight away. He's fighting Umar, UFC 321. Winner of that, I'm sure, becomes the number 1 contender. I mean, you would have to think. So who knows? Maybe those losses aren't as bad. But to your point, he was 20-1. Comes to the UFC, he's got 2 losses. He's 0-2. So, I mean, when you look at it, out of 21 fights to have 1 loss and be 0-2, it does show you that there's levels. But I think we do need to pump the brakes a little bit because, again, Batista's right there. And maybe this Jacob guy will end up being good, too. We don't know. And it was a split decision. He didn't get dominated.
So Jacob is 17-3, which sounds like a record for someone who's been fighting for a very long time. But when I'm looking at his record here, he's fighting a bunch of no-name people, don't even have Wikipedia pages. And in organizations, competition I've never even heard of, like KSW. Right. The first person he fought that has a Wikipedia page is Patchy Mix. And, he beats him. So I think Patchy Mix is a flop. I think the hype train has been derailed. And I think this proves I'm not a UFC elitist. I recognize that there's been a lot of really good fighters that are in other organizations. And I could point out some that are still fighting now in other organizations who I think could dominate if they were in UFC or maybe even came back to the UFC, like Ngannou. But I think between this and Chandler, I think just shows that there's a huge skill gap between the best at Bellator and pretty much anyone in the UFC.
I agree. It's insane. UFC does get the top talent. And with Contender Series going off like it is now, people aren't even blinking towards Bellator anymore.
Yeah, they're the big show in town. Everybody knows it. If you make it there, you've done your thing. Now, I will say this in Chandler's defense. In his debut, he destroyed Dan Hooker. I just think he came too late. I think if he came a decade earlier, it's a different thing. But, I mean, what he's fighting at now, age-wise in the UFC versus 10 years ago at Bellator is apples and oranges, if you ask me.
Right.
Well, his problem is 100% his fight IQ. He basically goes out there and fights like he took Tylenol. He grabs people. He tries to throw them around. He doesn't match up his combination.
No technique at all.
He's flashy, and that worked in Bellator. But, coming to the UFC where you've got technical masters out there, it's just not going to hold up.
Correct.
All right, going back to the top of this card, though, looking at the 2 champions that won last night, we need to talk about what's next for these guys. Let's start with Merab. Who or what is next for Merab? Does he face someone else in this division? Do you think he needs to move up? Do you think he needs to face maybe the champion that's below him? What's next for Merab?
I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, Merab has put himself in a situation where he wants to fight at that White House card. He said he'd fight on the undercard. I know it's a long way away. I do think there's another fight in his future between now and then. So the question is, who do you put him against? I think we're looking at the winner of Umar versus Mario. Like I said, that's the next pay-per-view, 321, here in 20 days. I think he'll fight the winner of that contest. Umar proved he was a great match for him, was up 2-0 at one point, and of course we know how Marab is, and he turns it on late. But I would like to see that again. I thought that was a very competitive match. I think Umar can get past Mario. If he doesn't, Mario's proven himself to be in a position to go ahead and have that contest. But I do think he gets the winner of that match. And then maybe there's a super fight coming down the pipe for him. Maybe he gets Pantoja to catch weight at 130 or something weird like that. At the White House, I could see it. But I do think, like I said, the winner is going to be the winner of that 321 contest here soon. They'll probably fight in March or so, maybe February, and do it like that.
What about you, Roy? What do you think is next for Marab?
I think it's probably Olberg.
Olberg? from
Yeah.
heavyweight?
Oh, what am I saying? Oh my gosh!
Sorry, we can edit it.
That is
We can edit it.
no.
No, it's a bold prediction. Let's.
That is
That's a bold prediction.
That is a massive weight cut for Carlos Olberg. So if he fights at 205, and he probably walks around at maybe 210, 220, 230 maybe, and he has to weight cut down to 135.
70 pounds.
Patty does it.
Are you trying to say Umar?
It's got to be Umar.
You think that's it? Well, he does have to get past Batista first.
Yeah, but I don't think that's going to be much of a contest. Batista has.
Umar's going to beat Batista, so you said it right.
Right. And then let's not forget, we also have the other champion that fought last night, avenging his loss against Magomed Ankalaev. There's a lot of speculation about what's next for Alex Pereira. I've already seen people posting about it online. So Yuri Prochazka won last night. Do we see Yuri Prochazka versus Alex Pereira 3? Carlos Olberg had a very dominant performance last week. Do we see Carlos Olberg versus Alex Pereira? Or does Alex Pereira move up to heavyweight? He's talking about wanting to do it. He wants to fight someone heavyweight. What's next for Alex Pereira? I personally think it should be Carlos Olberg. That's who I would like to see him fight next. I think Carlos Olberg kind of has this aura about him. He has a lot of that same energy where he looks scary. He performs really well. When the bell rings, he is just an absolute killer. And I think that would be an amazing contest between two of who I think are the best at 205 currently. But we still have other options here. So, Rick, what do you think's next for Alex Pereira? Or would you like to see either one or both?
It could go a few different ways, and I think they're all pretty satisfying. He's run through that division. He's beaten everybody in the top 6 or 7, with the exception of Olberg. If you wanted to say there was one more fight before he cleaned out the division, and that's Olberg, that's valid and fair. I'd have no problem with that. Again, he wants to be on that White House card. He said so last night himself. That's not speculation. So you would have to think there's at least one more fight for him between now and then, especially considering he took virtually no damage last night. So does he fight Olberg? I think that's probably what's most likely for his next fight before he goes to heavyweight on the White House card in some form of a super fight. He was going to call out John Jones, but of course, John Jones's brother passed. He said it wasn't the right time, but he still said in so many words, like that's who he wants to fight at the White House card. So whether it's Jones, if he gets his act together, or if Dana even wants to do that fight, or if it's Aspinall or whoever it is, I do think heavyweight will be in his near future. But I'll go ahead and say he's probably going to fight Carlos Olberg next, and everybody in the UFC world can cross their fingers that he wins that and sets up one of the biggest fights of all time.
And what do you think, Roy? What's next for Poatan?
So, as a fan, I hate whenever somebody gets a strap and jumps a weight division. I think it's the worst thing that you can do to your division to betray them like that. So, I really, really hope that he decides to fight Olberg and defend it at least once. I get after that you're looking at a trilogy with Yuri, but he's got to defend it at least once before going up to heavyweight.
Right. And he did have some defenses with his first title run at light heavyweight, and he has beat Yuri twice, so I don't think a lot of people are going to be excited to see that third fight between those two. As much as I like Yuri, I just don't think it's necessary. Whenever you're 0-2 against somebody, I'm less invested in it.
Unless it's a situation like with Volk and Holloway, where Holloway just kept beating everybody who came up and earning the shot.
And also, speaking of Holloway, in another trilogy he was in where he was 0-2, he did win that last one against Dustin Poirier. So, never say never, but I think most people are just not as excited for that one at light heavyweight. The Yuri versus Alex 3, that is.
Yeah, I think if you ask most people, it's like, hey, you can have this guy versus Yuri a third time, which sure it would be entertaining. We all know that. Or you can go ahead and put this guy against John Jones or Tom Aspinall
Goldberg.
What are you more excited to see?
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
is that all we got to talk about on UFC 320?
I think that covers it, my man.
I think we got all 8 angles.
Right. So UFC just has a brutal schedule, man. They just don't stop. We got almost every single weekend there's a fight. So we have a fight next week, a fight night, and I'm just not prepped for it to give you my predictions on all these fights. But we do have a very exciting main event headlining next week in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. UFC Fight Night, Charles Oliveira versus Gamrot. What do you guys think about this card?
I think I can't pronounce Gamrot's first name. Matutes?
Why do you think I just said versus Gamrot?
Okay. But home field advantage. Oliveira's got to win this one, though. Not that he's going to win. He's got to win. Otherwise, he's looking at retirement.
Yeah, I 100% agree. This is one of my absolute favorites. But yeah, I think he beats Gamrot. I think it's very competitive. Gamrot is known for his grappling. But Charles Oliveira in front of the home crowd, we're talking about the guy with the most finishes in UFC history, the most submissions in UFC history. And he knows in his heart of hearts he has to get the win or else he's probably just all the way done. So if he wants to stay in contention and keep his career going, he's got to do it. And I think he does. I think he pulls it off. Maybe that's a little bit of heart over head. He has struggled a little bit recently, but I still think he's one of the peak athletes that we still have, even at this point in his career. He's still very, very dangerous. I thought he beat Arman Sarukian at UFC 300. He ended that fight in a very favorable position, and so he had a bad decision go against him, or else he might still be championship caliber in some people's eyes. But nonetheless, big redemption spot here. Got to get the win.
Right. It is interesting.
I'm a huge Oliveira fan. I think that he's one of the greats of the sport, and he's a stand-up guy on top of it. That makes for good fights. But he's at that point where it's either got to be a victory to propel him back into those top leadership ranks, or he's got to retire before tarnishing his legacy.
Yeah, I'm looking at Gamrot's record right here, and it's kind of interesting that he has a win over Arman Sarukian, but he also has losses against Beneil Dariush and Dan Hooker.
Yeah, well, that's lightweight for you. That division is just murderer's row, and has been for quite a while. It's probably been the deepest for the longest.
And those two recent losses against Hooker and Dariush are both decisions. So, but those are both pretty solid competitors in their own right. So,
yeah, that'll be fun. If nothing else, watch that main event. That should be fireworks.
Right. Yeah. Vicente Luque is on this card as well. He's always win or lose. He always puts on a really fun fight. So I'll be sure to tune in that one. He's actually kind of on a rough patch lately. He's 2-5 in his last 7, or I'm sorry, 2-4 in his last 6. But he's also one of those guys, like, even if he loses, he puts on good fights. So
sounds a lot like Michael Chandler, sir.
Right. But yeah, that's pretty much all we got to say on that one. We'll be sure to follow up whenever this card happens next week. We'll follow up that following Sunday and give you a review of all the winners and losers of that fight and what is next for all of them. So make sure you tune in for that one. So anyway, that was UFC 320. Anything else you guys want to mention about this card?
That was a fun card. I definitely would recommend watching most all those fights, if not all of them, if you missed it. There's a lot of implications from these fights as far as what's going to happen, what's going forward in the division. Alex Pereira, the biggest, in my opinion, probably the biggest star in the sport right now that's current, not named Conor McGregor. I think he regained his status, and so it's going to be a lot of fun to see what he does and where he goes.
Right. Yeah, this card, all 5 fights on the main card were really fun to watch. Only one went to decision, and it was a really fun decision fight to watch. And all the other ones had really fun finishes to take in.
Oh yeah.
I think with Pereira taking over the belt yesterday, now we've got a champion who isn't underestimated going forward, and that's going to be really good for the division if he keeps fighting in it. Merab impressed me in all kind of ways. I knew he had it in him. It just was a solid win. Sandhagen was amazing. Basically, all these fights were just top tier, even the one that went to decision. So if you got a chance to tune into them, by all means, watch them. These were top tier. The matchmaking right now is great.
I'm also looking forward to the next pay-per-view. Not the next event, the next pay-per-view.
Is that Aspinall?
Yup.
Yeah. It's been about a year since we've seen that belt on the line, too. So that'll be exciting. The biggest belt in all of combat sports.
Just 3 more weeks, man.
Yep.
The rest of the card is,
There are a lot of implications, though. Like I said, you got that Umar fight against Batista. That's the number 1 contenders match. You got Almeida and Spivak. Volkov. That's a number 1 contenders match. So, there's a lot going on there.
actually, I take back my because I look at the co-main and I said but when I look at the next 3, you got Umar versus Batista, what we just mentioned, and then Volkov versus Almeida.
That's number 1 contenders type match.
Right.
I mean, the winner of that puts himself right there.
And then you got Rakic versus a name that I'm going to completely butcher, Azamat Murzakanov.
Well, the Rakic fights are fun. They're standing bangers, so that might be entertaining.
And if you look on the prelim card, you've got Chris Barnett fighting at heavyweight against Hambi Adewalabalaba.
Now it's your turn to butcher names.
That sounds right.
Abdel Wahab.
Going back to that Rakic fight, the guy he's facing is 15-0
Oh, wow.
with
that might be
11 knockouts,
Yeah, that's going to be a banger.
and that's at light heavyweight. So they like to throw bones in that weight division.
All right, early prediction. Who y'all got for Volkov versus Almeida for what will probably be a number 1 contenders match?
Almeida by Snooze Fist.
Volkov.
Almeida's going to take him down and lay on him for 15 minutes.
Volkov is going to get taken down. He's going to eventually get back up, and he's going to knock Almeida out.
I hope you're right.
That's what Blades did.
Yep.
All right. And just for good measure, who's going for Cyril Gane in this one?
Crickets.
I'd sooner watch Power Slap before I root for Cyril Gane in that fight. And you know how much
He's
I
going
hate
to
Power
come
Slap.
out there and show his first time ever to get a real knockout. He's just going to manage a high kick and take Tom to the ground and surprise all of us.
When that event comes closer and we get on the podcast where we do a preview for that one, we're going to have a lot of things to say about what we expect to see and want to see and future implications surrounding that match. For sure.
Yeah.
It's going to be a big topic to cover. So,
Yeah, 321 is going to be a big card for the heavyweight division, which I'm glad to see because it's going to get that division moving again.
right.
Yeah, finally heavyweights on display. There's only, like I said in the last pod, 32, 33 guys on the roster at heavyweight. So to have all these big heavyweight fights with all the implications to follow, it's going to be exciting. It's good to get that division rolling.
Maybe I need to go join the UFC since that's the weight class I'd be in and show everybody my awesome blue belt jiu-jitsu skills.
There you go.
I would get murdered by everybody. I'd get killed
We
by
need a
everybody.
good jiu-jitsu practitioner at heavyweight. All these guys either wrestle or box.
Well, actually, Almeida technically is a jiu-jitsu guy. He actually had won almost every one of his fights leading up to the UFC by submission. Then when he got to the UFC, he's like, I guess I'll play it safe and just grind these guys out. Yeah, if you actually look at his record, and this is something we could, of course, discuss later. Let me pull it up real quick. Jailton Almeida is 22-3, and he has 13 by submission. So he wasn't quite undefeated, but yeah, it was most of submissions. He's a high-level jiu-jitsu black belt, but since coming to the UFC, he has 1 submission win. No, I take that back. He actually has 2 submission wins, and then he has a loss to Curtis Blades and some TKOs and decisions thrown in there. That's something we could cover on a future episode. We could do a deep dive on these guys later. All right, who's going to sign us off?
You do it, Vince.
Me? I always sign us in. I guess I could sign us off. So anyway, thank you all for joining us on the Ground and Pound Cast. Be sure to tune in next week when we cover Oliveira versus Gamrot. That's going to be a banger. And if you haven't watched these fights already, go and watch these fights. They're absolutely phenomenal. Even if you can only find the highlights on YouTube, these are really good fights to watch. So once again, thank you for joining us, and we will see you all next week.
Later.
Adios.